want to get your input if you watched the CNBC debate on the Republican presidential candidates last night, or you're reading about it today in the papers. A lot of talk about the economy. We want to get your thoughts about what they said about the economy. Baltimore, Maryland, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. After watching, I've watched all the Republican debates, and it's clear cut that it seems like Ron Paul has a firm grasp of reality when it comes to the issues that America is facing. Earlier when you had your comment, well, I don't know if it's commentator or not, but he stated that Ron Paul has no chance, and a lot of people in the media are stating that. So it kind of seems like the media is actually the ones that's going to pick the candidates, and it seems like the more money you have, that determines if you're going to be president or not.
So specifically when it comes to Ron Paul, give me a specific about what he said or what he has said about the economy that impresses you.
Well, as far as like the economy, our monetary system. I mean, that's the major problem. I mean, we're spending, and we're creating money, and it's like, where are we creating this money? It's just like out of thin air. We're borrowing from China, we're borrowing from Japan, and I mean, it's pretty much the monetary system. He has it down pat, and he's ready to get rid of the Federal Reserve. That I think the Federal Reserve should be abolished because, I mean, it's not federal about it, and they sure don't have no reserves. So
here's Ron Paul from last night.
We're going broke. We have this huge deficit. We're spending nearly $1 trillion with maintaining our empire overseas, and that's a cost. Right now, we owe foreigners $2.7 trillion. No wonder they have money to come back in here and buy stuff up, and then we object. But that has to do with our monetary system as well as our foreign policy. So if we want prosperity, we have to change our foreign policy. We have to live within our means, but we can't maintain a reserve currency where all our greatest export today are paper dollars. We create money out of thin air, and they still accept it as if it was backed by gold. And that is the reason all this money goes overseas, and at the same time we find that all this military activity overseas, it's bankrupting this country. And not only that, it's a threat to our personal liberties here, and it's going to be a threat to our economy because we are beginning to live beneath our means. And that is a natural consequence of what happens when you live beyond your means. So we must change our policy both overseas and domestically.
St. Mary's, Georgia. We are talking about Republicans on the economy stemming from the debate last night. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for C-SPAN. I've watched all the debates, and it seems to me that the candidates are just striking themselves out. I mean, you got Fred Thompson that striked himself out immediately for me when he says we're living on borrowed money, but then turns around and says that the economy is strong. You got candidates up there debating on whether we should use lawyers or any other method of going to war besides consulting or getting approval from Congress, and that strikes you out as a president right there. If you don't know that you need approval from Congress to go to war, then you don't need to be running for president. We don't need an authoritarian. Another reason that I strike some of the candidates out is because they are talking about preemptively striking another country, and this is not what America was built on. The only one that really stood out to me, and I'm not a crazy Ron Paul supporter, but he is the one that's speaking the truth. And I don't agree with everything that he says, but I got to tell you, he's winning by default.
Okay, have to leave it there. Belfront, Pennsylvania.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out what happened to the Constitution. There seems to only be one person for following the Constitution. These candidates are a disgrace. I mean, the only person that seems to want to do anything and is passionate about what he's talking about is Ron Paul. The rest of them seem like everything's so rehearsed, and the only time they decide to get passionate about it is when Ron Paul pisses them off.
What did the others say last night as far as the economy is concerned that backs up your point?
Not all of them were double talking about it except for Ron Paul. None of them wanted to do anything about it and that sounded anyone legitimate except for Ron Paul.
Is there a presidential candidate that you see out there that kind of backs your ideas then, or at least what you think about them?
In the limit, I personally think it's way too early to start thinking about electing a world leader, 1 year before the election now. Ron Paul is the only person who has publicly talked about addressing the root of the problem, and not in every situation, just in a few. For instance, when he spoke of the Iraq War, he said that he was not in favor of it. He said he was not in favor of it, but he didn't think that it was necessary to begin with. In hindsight, I think that most logical people, would agree with him.
Have to leave it there. Thanks for the call. Here, Long Branch, New Jersey.
Yes, good morning.
Hi.
I didn't watch the debate, but I've seen a lot of the clips this morning from it. And the only one that really makes any sense out of the mess of them, and really it's a mess, is Ron Paul. And he doesn't agree with George Bush on almost anything. So, I mean, only to disagree with the previous caller. But my whole point is, well, and by the way, I'm also supporting the draftgore.com website, because that's who I'd like to see run. I will not vote for Hillary Clinton, and I am a Democrat. But all that being said, I mean, some of these guys are just, we're starting to look more like Nazi Germany than the United States of America. The way we're going around and antagonizing countries all over the place. I mean, it scares me. This bunch scares me. Even some of the Democrats scare me. Mrs. Clinton's one of them. And that's all I really have to say. But Ron Paul, as far as the economy, we are spinning ourselves into a spiral, into a ditch. And he's right about that. He's right about war. That's all I have to say. Out of all of them, that's the only one I would vote for if I had to. But I hope it's Al Gore. All right? Have a good morning. I'm going to go. Bye.
Sorry to flip through the papers. I noticed that there was a full-page ad, I think, that was that's connected to the Draft Gore website. I was trying to find that ad. Hopefully, maybe I can find it in the midst of this. Kansas City, Kansas. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name's Paul from Kansas City. A couple of things I'd like to address. First, I've heard folks speak that Ron Paul seems to get a lot of calls on C-SPAN because Ron Paul, people that back him are just more vocal. I don't know if I believe in that entirely because he just seems to get so many calls, one, and so much attention. Secondly, he actually raised $5 million for his campaign, which I believe that put him in third because Mitt Romney actually loaned $8 million to his own campaign. The third thing I'd like to speak of, the previous caller spoke about. The other thing I would like to mention from the Democrats have never balanced a budget as far as Hillary saying that they balanced the budget. They borrowed from the Social Security. So when you borrow from Social Security and you don't pay it back, you write an IOU that's never cashed in. You're not balancing a budget. So I'm not going to vote Democrat either. I'm going to vote Republican. I'm going to vote Ron Paul, and I'd recommend that everybody else do the same. Thank you.
Fairfax, Virginia.
Good morning. Good morning. I think it's interesting if you took the label off some of the candidates. For instance, if you said you got a guy that was dressed up as a woman, that lived with two gay men, that's been married 3 times, that believes in abortion. I mean, as a Republican, I would be hard-pressed to believe that that's Rudy Giuliani. If you said that Mitt Romney, is a Mormon, he's not a Christian conservative, and he's the governor of Massachusetts, and he's just totally failed in his efforts and now flip-flops to try to fit the position. I'm a Republican since the early 70s when I started voting. I believe they all have failed policy on the economy. I think Ron Paul is the best candidate. I think he's the only one that tells the truth. I think he's the only one that knows what he's talking about. Unfortunately, telling the truth doesn't make you president, and I don't think the candidate is there yet. I think we're going to see someone emerge. I hope I see someone emerge so I can cast a vote, but anybody listening, anybody who's a true Republican, a true conservative, they would cut their arm off before they would cast a vote for Rudy Giuliani. That would be, Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he knew that Rudy Giuliani was running on the Republican ticket. I think it's a disgrace. Thank you.
Chicago, Illinois.
Yes, I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to be voting for Ron Paul. It amazes me, the media. I watched all the popular news outlets, Scarborough, Chris Matthews, and the last 10 or 12 calls I was listening to are talking about Ron Paul. If you were to listen to the popular media, the man doesn't exist. I was wondering if you guys can get somebody on to explain that phenomenon. Is the press or the media, so-called liberal media, picking our candidates? because I'm amazed. Anybody that's paying attention is going to go for Ron Paul. Most people paying attention is going to go for Ron Paul. However, elections are decided by people who don't pay attention, and that's what our media is focused on. We need to get this media under control.